Hello developers, welcome back to iAskTech. In today's tutorial, we will dive deep into understanding the key differences between constructor and ngOnInit in Angular 18. This is a crucial concept that every Angular developer needs to master as it directly impacts how we initialize our components and manage their lifecycle effectively. The constructor is a special method in TypeScript or JavaScript classes that gets called when an instance of class is created. In Angular, it's primarily used for dependency injection and basic variable initialization. Let me quickly show you how does it look like in real world example. This is my Angular project and this is the basic code that was generated by Angular CLI. I'm going to generate a service, ngGenerate service user. Press enter. The service has been created. Okay, currently there is nothing in this service. I just wanted to demonstrate how we normally use constructor in the real world example. There are many other use cases. This is one of them. So first of all, we normally create a constructor in this way, and then we inject a service with the help of the injector in this way. User service is equal to user service. Make sure to import it like this and add private here, or make it public if you want to access it in the HTML. Now here I will just simply display the console.log and constructor called. Okay, save it. And now if you reload it and go to the inspect element, go to the console, you will see that constructor is called is there. Let's break down what's happening in this code. The constructor is the first method that gets called when the component is created. It's perfect for dependency injection as shown with the user service. At this point, none of the component's decorators or input properties are available. The constructor runs before Angular sets up the component's data binding. Now let's understand the ngOnInit. ngOnInit is a lifecycle hook that gets called after Angular has initialized all data bound properties of component. It's implemented through the onInit interface. So let me show you. First of all, here I will add two properties. Username is equal to empty string and user data would be empty array. Okay, and here we have to implement the class onInit. Make sure to add the import statement for the onInit. After that, we must have to implement that function by defining ngOnInit within our class. Now within this function, I will simply assign username with this value, and then I will use this dot load user data. Okay, and now we have to define a function that we are calling in ngOnInit, that is load user data, and within that function I will simply access my service that we injected with the help of the constructor. Here I need to define a function in that service, get data. So let's do that first. I'm going to the user service and here I will define that get user data. Here we will use fake API to get data, or you can use JSON API. So there is a famous JSON placeholder API that you can use just for testing purpose. So JSON placeholder will give you the data. Okay, and we need to inject the HTTP here with the help of the constructor in this service. So add the import statement for the HTTP client on the top. Now we are able to use it, and I need to return the response of this function. Okay, I am not subscribing in this service. I just have to return the response of this execution. Now here, when we call the get data, we will receive the observable. We can now subscribe to this function, and I can now simply assign the data that we got from the API to the user data property that we defined earlier. Okay, so now let me show you. Actually, let me delete all of the content from the HTML. Here I will add hello world, and here in the HTML I will use the loop to display all of the data that we got from the API. And here I will also add the welcome message for that username, and I am getting error on the ng for. The reason is that if you want to use this for syntax, then you have to import the common module in your standalone component. Okay, once that is done, you will not get this error. And now go back here. Currently nothing worked yet, so let's see what's going on. Open the inspect element console, we see this error that HTTP client, there was no provider for this. As this is a new project, so we have to provide the HTTP client. For that, in the app.config.ts, we have to pass a function provide HTTP client in this way. Make sure to add the import statement for this function. Now it is available. If you reload the browser, and you can see the hello world and welcome message and all of the data that we got from the API is visible. And we can also look at the console logs that we displayed in the TS file. You can see in the constructor we displayed this message, and in the ngOnInit we called this. Okay, now you can see if you look at the order of the log messages, this constructor message was printed for the first time, and after that ngOnInit function was executed and that printed this message. So the key points about ngOnInit are that it is called after the constructor. As you saw, all input properties are initialized and available at that point. It is perfect for any initialization logic that depends on input properties. It is ideal for making HTTP calls and complex initializations. Now let's look at a practical example that demonstrates when to use each. Okay, I'm going to create another component here, ngGenerate C dashboard. C means component. Okay, we got the folder with all of our component files. Now I need to use this dashboard component in my app component. So for that, I will add that component in the imports array of app.component. So let's type dashboard component, make sure to import it like this. Okay, now it is available. I can just get rid of everything from here, and here I will add app dashboard, save it, and here you will see that the content from the dashboard is visible. Now go back to the dashboard component and let's add some code. The very first line that I would add is input. Make sure to import it from Angular/core, and the name would be title with the default value string, empty string. Okay, and now we will define a property dashboard data, and here I will add is data loaded boolean type with the default value false. Okay, now here I will define a constructor that will also inject the user service. Okay, and now here I will simply console the message that dashboard constructor called, and here I will also print this dot title that we will be getting from the input from the parent. So in the constructor we should only do the dependency injection and simple initializations, nothing else. By the way, here we are trying to access the title, but at this stage the title would be empty because at this stage the title is not available. This constructor function is executed way too early, that's why it is not available yet. But to solve that problem, we have the onInit, and here I will add that function here. Before doing anything else, I will show you what we get here. Let me pass the title from the parent user dashboard, save it. Now go to the inspect element, and you will notice that here after this message dashboard constructor called, I used this dot title, but in the console we don't see any title that we passed from the parent. Okay, because at this time it was not available. Now let's try to access it from the ngOnInit, and you will notice that at that time it would be available. Console.log. Here I am saying dashboard component ngOnInit called and this dot title. Okay, actually let me add this dot title is equal to, so that we could see it more clearly in the console. All right, reload it, and here you can see when constructor called, at that time title was empty, and when ngOnInit executed we have the title available. Okay, so this is the place where we should implement the complex initializations and data loading. So let's load the data. I am going to call the function this dot load dashboard data, and I need to define this function load data. Okay, and I have used the get data function of my user service, and I have assigned the data to the dashboard data, and I have set the is data loaded to true. Okay, by default the value of this boolean variable was false. Now I need to print all of this data in the HTML. For that, again I have to add the common module like we did earlier, because we want to use the for loop. Okay, here I will just simply add a div, and h1 tag, h2 tag with the title, and here I'm using the if condition, that ng if is data loaded. If data was loaded, then we should run the for loop by using dashboard data, that is an array, and every item of that array is a user, and within that div I will simply print the JSON. I will use the JSON pipe here. Okay, so it will print the user as it is for every item in that array. Okay, this is what we have. This is too much. We can put it in the pre-tag, so I guess that will make it more prominent. Okay, great. So this example clearly shows that constructor is used for dependency injection, like we did for the user service. ngOnInit handles data loading and complex initialization, and input properties are only available in ngOnInit as we saw earlier. HTTP calls are made in ngOnInit, not in the constructor. You can do that, but that is not a best practice. So here are the key guidelines for using constructor and ngOnInit. So you will see two examples here. The first example is the use case that you should not do. So for example, don't make the HTTP calls here in the constructor, and don't try to access the input properties here, because at that time input data is not available. And instead of that, you should follow this approach. Use the constructor only for the dependency injection, and use the ngOnInit for HTTP calls and complex initialization here. And you can use ngOnInit to access the input properties that would definitely be available at that time. Alright, now let's summarize the key differences that we have learned so far. First of all, let's talk about the constructor. Constructor used for dependency injection, called when class is initialized, runs before data bindings are set up, and you should keep it minimal and simple. And about ngOnInit, it is called after data bound properties are initialized. It is perfect for complex initialization. It is ideal for HTTP calls. You can use it to access the input properties. There are a few things to remember. Use constructor for dependency injections only. Use ngOnInit for everything else like data fetching, complex initialization. Always implement onInit interface when using ngOnInit. Keep your constructor clean and simple. That's it for today's tutorial. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more Angular content. Drop your questions in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.